Welcome back, folks. I apologize. I sound like Jesse Pinkman for Breaking Bad because I have been dealing with a rather horrible set of viruses. I believe I had the flu, and it may have escalated into pneumonia. God only knows what else. I don't know. But my doctor just says let it pass. But I am actually not sick. I feel fine. And with the exception of my voice, I'm totally normal. But I wanted to do a follow-up video on the 2005 Corolla. I got a lot of feedback, a lot of viewership from that video, and I feel like I owe you guys some closure. You know what I mean? So, here's the deal. New Hampshire is one of many states that requires annual state inspections. Now, I'm not going to get into the philosophy of whether state inspections are just another form of government overreach, because I completely believe in them. I do. We're not talking about emissions compliance right here. We're talking about the chassis integrity. You know, if you roll into a state inspection facility, well, actually, no, it's not. There are state facilities, but generally we go to local mechanics, car dealers, whatever. If you roll in there with a car that has, you know, 0.5 millimeter left on the brakes and holes in the frame, the state inspection program is designed to keep you from going back on the road with that vehicle, at least legally. You're either forced to have the vehicle repaired or, you know, send it to its ultimate destination, its final destination. And that is to keep all of us safe, and as well as the driver. We are we're a small government state, for the most part. Live and let live. Live free or die is our motto. In fact, it's on every license plate ever stamped in the state of New Hampshire. So we're not California, okay? We have very, very, very relaxed laws in a lot of ways. I can drive my car without insurance or a seatbelt simultaneously, legally in this state. But the one weird thing we do have is state inspections. Now, why is this important? And how does it pertain to our beloved 2005 Corolla? I'll tell you. Hell, even that scooter has a state inspection sticker on it. So, you know, they equal opportunity, you know. So the Corolla went to my father. We got it for nothing. I drove it home, pulled the plates off of it, gave the plates back to my coworker, and my dad took the title and he brought it and to the DMV. He got himself a set of temporary plates so he could legally drive the car until at which time he got everything repaired so that it would be a good running car for him. Now, a little bit of a backstory there. My father, he actually was an auto mechanic. He knows his way around a car. He has performed state inspections. He used to be licensed to do so. There isn't a thing in the world my dad cannot fix. Sometimes he will repair things out of spite because somebody told him he couldn't. I'm not even exaggerating. That is who my father is. If you tell him he can't do something, he will cut his nose off, chop his feet off, if that's what it took to prove you wrong. He's that kind of guy. So, because he was an auto mechanic and he owned a small business dealing with automotive locks, he has connections, he knows shop owners. So he brought the Corolla over to one of his buddies who has a full-service shop and lift. And they rolled that car up on the lift, and as soon as it left the ground, They knew it was not going to be good. They could hear crackling sounds in the at the lift points. We're not talking pinch rail either, or pinch welds. They used the proper lift points, and they brought the car up in the air, and you could just hear cracking. So, they did what they could. The car's not going to fall off the lift, so they went and they poked around underneath. And what they found was that the car, although it looked like $1 million, it looked like a $3,000 car from 5 feet away. The interior was immaculate. The exterior, the paint, everything about this car didn't even have a broken windshield. That's kind of like the default, break. Like every time you find a car that's under $3,000, it's got a broken windshield. Not this one. Everything but the AC worked. It ran like a top. Good transmission, good driveline. Just needed brakes. Right? Or not? Well, here's the thing. They found so much hidden rust under that car that the rear suspension was at risk of breaking off. It was that bad. The thing is, and this is, again, why we have state inspections here in New Hampshire, because rust is a problem here. Vehicles typically start to rust at around, I'm actually finding 5-year-old cars that are starting to rust. Not like dangerous rust. I'm talking, little bits of hardware under the vehicle, mount points, areas where there wasn't a lot of undercoating or any kind of protection starting to rust. Pickup truck frames will start to rust at around 5 to 6 years of age. Now we're talking about a 19-year-old Corolla that was never garaged. And that is clearly a recipe for disaster. So, pretty much right off the bat, my dad looking at the guy, and they're shaking their heads together like, this ain't going to pass. And the amount of money it would take to repair that car, to make it safe for the road again, would be astronomical. And as a matter of fact, and this brings me to my next point, it's kind of a public service announcement for some of you younger folks, or folks who just don't know these things. If you live in an area like New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, Maine, any of the northern states, really, all across the entire U.S., Detroit, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the northern states where we get a lot of snow and ice in the winter months. In these areas, we use a lot of corrosive materials on the roads, and this is to save lives. And once again, I feel like the good outweighs the bad in most cases, because that road salt can prevent you from sliding into another vehicle in front of you in a black ice situation. Road salt is what keeps traffic moving in inclement weather and keeps people from dying. But it has 2, maybe 3 side effects that are not desirable. One of them being it causes corrosion under your vehicle. The second being it destroys infrastructure. Bridges, aquifers, wetlands. It's really a bad thing. Very, very, very bad thing that we use it. If there was something that was safer, I'm sure we would have found it by now. But anyway, up in my area, we use liquid sodium chloride on the highways, and I think on the roads it's usually like a rock salt that comes out of a spreader. But on the highway, they use liquid sodium chloride, which is the worst, because that splashes up into your wheel wells, your undercarriage, and it causes a very rapid deterioration of your vehicle. The second thing I want to bring up is, if you do live in one of those states and you bought a cheap car, $1,000, $2,000 car, and it needs brakes, or it needs shocks, or it needs something underneath the car. I'm going to warn you, because this car was a perfect example of that, this Corolla. It's never just one thing. You know, you buy the car, the seller says, oh, it needs brakes, it needs shocks, it needs brake lines. You're not just going to get away with brake lines. You're not going to get away with just doing the brakes. 9 times out of 10, you're going to start taking that car apart, and you're going to end up having to replace major components, suspension bushings, the shocks. You're going to take the shocks out, and you're going to find out the shock towers are rotted out. You know, it's never just one thing with these cars. So if you're, I'm trying to scare people from buying cheap cars because Dave Ramsey told them to. I'm just trying to set realistic expectations. So while they were poking along under that car that just needed front brakes, they found that the brake lines were beginning to rot away. So we would be doing the front calipers in this car, not this one. This is just a placeholder, but we'd be doing front calipers because they were frozen solid. So we'd be taking out the calipers, meaning we're going to be undoing hydraulic lines. Now, those are 20-year-old hydraulic brake hoses. What do you think is going to happen when we start undoing those? They're going to start cracking, or they're already cracking, but they're going to start disintegrating. Now, what are those bolted to? They're bolted to a little mount on the strut, which connects the hard brake line to the soft rubber hose. That hard brake line has enough corrosion on it to where just tweaking it a little bit would cause a leak. So now we're doing brake lines. Doing brake lines, we're going to be doing calipers, rotors. What about the wheel bearings? The car's 20 years old. It's probably going to need front wheel bearings, because that road salt that we talked about earlier can migrate through the old seals and get in there and cause the bearings to start failing. All I'm saying is this. If you live in a northern state and you're looking at a 20-year-old car because it's cheap, or even a 15 or 10-year-old car, just understand that you may be in it for more than you think. It's never just one thing. So the rust problem on this Corolla was actually quite serious. They actually found when they looked underneath the vehicle, right around where the gas tank is, the back wall behind the rear seats was also rusting away. Or actually, I'm sorry, the wheel wells, the inner wheel wells were rusting through. So the odor in the vehicle that was kind of musty, I didn't really think much of it. I thought maybe the car had just been sitting. Maybe some water got in from a cracked window, an open window or something. No, as a matter of fact, water has been getting into that car for years because the wheel wells were rotted through. So that water gets flung into the cabin, into the carpet padding, where it wicks through and soaks the entire floor, where it gets stagnant and the rust begins. And it's just not good news. So, what is to become of that poor 2005 Corolla that was ravaged by 19 New England winters? Well, unfortunately, it is destined for the crusher. And it's really gut-wrenching. It's sad. It really, really is sad. What actually is going to happen to the car is my dad was given a small cash offer. His buddy who owned the shop said, hey, you know, I could pick up another Corolla from Florida with a roached out interior, bad engine, bad transmission, something that's been beat to death, but a good body. And I could just swap the drive lines over and resell it and make a profit. So my dad's like, you know what? Fine. He sold the car to him. Get rid of it. We tried. We really tried. So my dad, you know, he was hoping that this car would have been just kind of a little bit of a break, because my mom's 2018 Hyundai Tucson's engine blew up. And because my mom ran it out of oil, I know. Because of that, they were going to decline the coverage. What happened was, so my parents bought this 2018 Tucson, and they bought it brand new as a lease, and they bought it out after the lease period was over. My mom absolutely loved the car. They got the oil changed about every 3,000 miles religiously. My father really does take care of their vehicles, and he makes sure that, the proper maintenance is done. Unfortunately, he did not place into consideration the fact that those Hyundai engines burn more oil than gasoline, apparently. And my mom never has ever gotten into the habit of checking her oil. And because of this, the engine just grenaded itself. Had no oil in it whatsoever. It actually, I think it soft seized, because my dad was able to refill the crankcase, and after it cooled off, it started up and it ran fine. But there was always a bit of valve clatter afterwards. So they were kind of forced into getting rid of it because he didn't want to put any money into it. The car had about 67,000 miles on it. Really, like what the fuck? What the fuck, Hyundai? So anyway, they bought another vehicle, a new vehicle, not a Hyundai. I won't say what it is because I don't want to hear it, because I'm not happy about it, but that's what they like, so, buy what you like. Just take care of it, whatever it is, don't run it out of oil. Nevertheless, so the Corolla is getting scrapped, and my dad is, so the whole point here was to get something that, he could just drive and enjoy while they rebuild their savings, and then buy another vehicle for my dad, because his 2014 Ford Interceptor, it's rusting pretty badly, almost as bad as that Corolla, actually, as a matter of fact. And it's only a 2014. So anyway, so that's what happened to the Corolla. That's the end of the story. If it was a Southern car, it'd be another story altogether. That car would have so much life left in it. But because of New England winters, it just didn't have a fighting chance. But to its credit, it did last nearly 20 years. So now this thing here has never seen winter, ever. I've owned this car for 6 years, and it's never seen winter in my time of ownership, and it's pretty much provable that it has never seen a winter previously either, because I've actually seen what one winter can do to a first-gen Miata. It is not pretty. I know a woman who bought one of these brand new, a 91 Special Edition British Racing Green. They drove it in one winter, and the engine is covered in corrosion. One winter. This salt stuff is no joke. So how do you prevent that from happening is probably going to be your next question. You're thinking of moving to New England, or you live here and you're just learning about vehicle ownership because you're 16, whatever. How do you prevent your car from turning into Swiss cheese? Well, two things. Fluid film. Fluid film, when applied to the undercarriage, just spray it over everything except the exhaust components. And what it's going to do is it soaks into and spreads throughout the surface of all the components it touches. It creeps. It's a nice creeping oil. And then after about a couple of weeks, the solvents evaporate off, and you're left with a waxy, oily substance. Now, what that's going to do is going to give you a self-healing layer of protection. It's not a paint. You don't want to use paint. You don't want to use this stuff. Don't ever use this undercoating. I learned that the hard way. I still have this can though, but stuff is good as a sound deadener, but does not protect you against corrosion. But there are coatings, oils like fluid film that will not damage rubber components, because it's a totally different type of oil. It's lanolin oil is what they're made out of, what that stuff is made of. So it won't harm your suspension parts. It won't harm your brake hoses. It won't harm your rubber exhaust mounts. It's good stuff. And it doesn't wash off easily. But you do have to reapply it about once a year before the start of every winter season. And I'm telling you, this stuff works amazing. It really does. It prevents your vehicle from turning into that Corolla. And I spray it over. I even sprayed this car, even though this car never sees winter. I've actually sprayed fluid film throughout this car. It does a really nice job of preventing rust. The other thing is, you want to make sure that the car is washed regularly. You don't want that salt sitting on the paint, sitting on the rims, especially the rims. Alloy wheels that have seen salt exposure repeatedly, they start to lose their coating and they look like shit. But if you regularly wash the wheels in like a self-spray bay or something, that problem won't start until much later in the vehicle's life. Again, this is a car that has never seen a single New England winter in 30 years. But the only Miatas left from this generation are the ones that haven't. Yeah, true story. But anyway, I just wanted to, again, provide some closure on that video, and to provide some insight and a learning opportunity for those of you who don't know this stuff. Salt eats cars. Keep them clean and try to do the undercoating. Now, you can actually bring your car to a shop that does nothing but oil undercoating. There's a company called NH Oil Undercoating, and they're like a franchise. And they make a product similar to fluid film, but it's applied with an air gun. So they put your car up on a lift in a grease pit, basically, and they just shoot it everywhere. They spray it over everything. It's like a couple $100. It's worth it. And even just to have it done once is worth it. What's even cooler is they even have versions of fluid film and the NH Oil undercoating product that contain, I believe, a mint oil. And what that's going to do for you is it's going to ward off mice. So if you store your vehicle in a garage like I do, in fact, I need to start getting my traps out, because now's the season where they start to eat cars, looking for places to nest. But they do make a version of that product that has mint in it, and that does repel mice. They hate the smell of mint. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for watching, and I apologize. I sound like Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad. Hey, Mr. White. Hey, science, bitch. Oh, I could do a perfect impression. Oh, man, I got to think of some good lines.